Hello and how are you to all my moms, pops, and loved ones of a deaf child? Thanks for choosing to watch this video today. I'll assume that everyone who's here is invested in supporting a child with hearing loss. And if you've come to YouTube for this type of support, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you haven't had any specialized training in this area as an SLP or a teacher of the deaf has. As a guardian, I'm sure that this can be really hard. There's only so much information that you can take in at once about supporting your deaf child, but there's so much that you want to do. One parent in a study summed up this feeling, saying that it's overwhelming in the beginning. I want the information, however, at the same time, you're trying to take in so much information that it's a lot to take in. And I'm sure you as well are very overwhelmed by all the science and statistics that are thrown at you. But what you really want to know is how you can help in your everyday life. The fact that you're here trying to educate yourself for your child says a lot, so I applaud you for that. My goal is to help you with this in a way that's a lot less stressful. According to the American Speech and Hearing Association, or ASHA, the goal of auditory therapy is to guide and coach parents to become the primary facilitators of their child's listening and spoken language development through active, consistent participation in individualized auditory verbal therapy, and to guide and coach parents to create environments that support listening for the acquisition of spoken language throughout the child's daily activities. So this is what we are going to be focusing on today. I know you must hear about a lot of complex and expensive activities that you can do to support your child. So instead, I'm going to change it up a bit. Today we're going to talk about how you can support your child in your everyday life by taking them on a nature walk. So before we go out and into nature, let's lay some groundwork for why this might be a helpful strategy. One thing that we should remember about language development is that it is very interactive. Sociocultural theory posits that children do not develop language in a vacuum, solely through an innate understanding of grammatical rules. Rather, learning occurs through interactions with those around them. This is most relevant with families, as research has shown, and so many sources have cited this research. This is a really key component for your child's speech practice. We live in a very overwhelming society now with lots of phones, computers, tablets, all these different technologies out there to distract our children. So if we pull them out of these over-congested settings and out into nature, we have a higher chance of those children focusing on our interactions and getting the most out of them. Also, even though the outdoors are a lot less distracting, it's still filled with visual cues and sensations that we can use as adults to our advantage in practicing speech and listening with our child. Let's remember that a parent who's hearing, who learned language primarily through auditory information, may use fewer non-auditory, visual and tactile, communicative strategies, whereas a deaf parent is more likely to use visual attention strategies than hearing parents. So even if you're a hearing parent, think about this. You're doing this with your deaf child, so wouldn't you want to use those types of strategies also? Nature and outdoor walks will provide a quieter environment with less technical distractions, but will still have sound to stimulate speech and listening, lots of visual cues, and also the outdoors are readily available regardless of what your financial situation is. There are some no-purchase necessary speech and listening practices hidden in nature with some added bonding time for you and your child. There's so much you can do and so many ways that you can adapt any activity to practice naturally on a nature walk with your child. But I'll show you a few ideas just to get you started. Let's use this scene of a brook in Hopewell, New Jersey. Let's say we're working on some high-frequency phonemes with our child. Usually high-frequency sounds are not easily picked up by our hard-of-hearing children. We can use a skill called auditory highlighting in this setting to practice phonemes such as ch and sh. Auditory highlighting is when we emphasize the sound that are the current reception or production goal for the child at hand in order to focus their listening on it and reinforce pronunciation. Here, we can practice high-frequency ch phoneme when we're repeating the bird noises that you heard in the background, saying cheep, cheep. You can also practice a sh phoneme of the water gushing, going shh for the child to listen to. Can you see how you can readjust this practice for really any phoneme that your child needs to practice? Just ask yourself what in your surrounding areas also makes that sound, and you can adapt it. Another practice that can happen here is a strategy called reformulation. This practice is when a listener hears a child's utterance and corrects it in a way that acknowledges the level of accuracy that the child has produced. For example, if a child pointed to the water in the video and said steam without that phoneme, you could correct them by repeating back, yes, a stream, using that auditory highlighting on that R. Or let's say you have a child that's more focused on grammar rather than speech production at the moment. You can have them, if they say they want to splash on the stream, you could tell them, we can splash in the stream. This corrects them with a positive reinforcement and utilizes modeling without taking control of the learning. Here is an example for if your child needs to practice their speech production as a whole. If your child needs to work on a skill, let's say respiration for example, we can use the nature as manipulative. So respiration is a skill that requires deep breaths to the abdomen with controlled exhales during speech. Let's use the leaf that we pick off the ground or the tree in this stream as a manipulative for this. So we can hold that leaf up in the air, right in the wind, and we can compare the wind to our breath and the leaf to how our tummy should be moving while we are breathing. You can then have the child blow a steady stream onto that leaf in order to make it shake. So when you're doing that steady stream, they need to have a lot of control over their breath. Both of these add engagement through a manipulative that the child can pick up off the ground or off the tree. And it also adds a visual cue. This will help them with their phonation and production of speech in general. Another very simple yet effective activity for building vocabulary for a developing child is labeling. So due to delayed access to language, there might be an extra need to support introducing vocabulary for your deaf child. Basically, due to lack of unintentional exposure to speech, there's a lot of vocabulary delays for our children. So narration helps fill this gap. Just simply say what you see around you. Point out the squirrel, say, hey, look at the furry squirrel. Point to the tree and say, that's a tall green tree. Very simple narrations will help the child learn associations and start labeling the things around them. So these are all the specific strategies I have for you today. But remember, these can all be adapted very easily based on the needs of your child. I also really want you to remember that everything we talked about today is free. So even for my families that can't otherwise afford materials, these are possible activities you can be doing with your child. This will help you avoid the double rigor gap, which is an intersection of disability and socioeconomic status that can really delay your child. Finally, let's remember to enjoy our walks with our children. Enjoy the time with your child, enjoy the peace of nature, and enjoy the success your child has as it comes. Thank you for watching and learning with me, and good luck.